question from the audience, which is actually about the production design and the inspiration behind it, and how much you were involved in designing, for example, the bed that you mentioned, but also this feeding chair, which I find incredible. How did that develop?
Yeah. Well, that chair, for example, is pretty much as described in the script, but a description in the script is never cannot be the actual object. I mean, every detail of that chair was discussed with me, with my production designers, with the specialists. We had a Greek element in our special effects. We had a Greek crew doing some special effects, working with the Canadian crew doing other effects. And at that point, it does become a collaboration. As the director, of course, I'm the one who has to say, yes, this is the way it should look, and so on. But there are many suggestions, many revisions. You have someone sketching things now, of course, on a computer, probably on an iPad, actually, and proposing certain ways to say that, this chair, this bone chair, what color are the bones, And I said, I think the chair should have a kind of yellowed feel to it, like a kind of aged bones, the aged tusks of an elephant, for example. I thought that was the right color for those. So it is a collaborative effort, but it is all trying to serve the script. It really begins with the script, and then everybody, works with it. And I was working with Carol Spear as production designer, and I've worked with her for 40 years, maybe more than 40 years now.
You are known for what is called body horror, a term that you don't like so much, as I learned. So maybe let's call it new flesh, or I don't know.
No, you can. It's fine. Go ahead, use it, because it is used. Yeah. It's not a term that I invented, by the way. Somebody else, I don't know who. Somebody invented that term, and it stuck.
But it is after several films that you made that were more, let's say, psychological thrillers or satires. It is a return to these themes of body modifications and the connection between the human body and technology. What is it that fascinates you about it, or why are you why are you obsessed in a way?
Well, I don't think of it as obsession, actually, but certainly an intense interest, let's say. I think obsession is a very special thing, Well, for example, I'm listening to you through hearing aids. I have, and basically they're very complex little computers that communicate with each other right through my brain. And so all sound that I hear now is curated by these hearing aids, these technological devices that couldn't have existed, 30 years ago, let's say. Well, likewise, I recently had cataract laser surgery. So the eyes that I'm looking at you with right now are through plastic lenses. I'm seeing you through plastic lenses that have replaced the lenses that I used to make all of the movies up to this movie. So I'm actually looking through different eyes that are a combination of technology and my physiology. This is considered normal. Cataract eye surgery is very common. But when you realize what it is, it's the destruction of the lenses in your eyes and the replacement of them by plastic lenses. The plastic lenses have some interesting aspects to it, because I do believe right now I can see a lot of ultraviolet light, UV, and which I couldn't see before. And colors have changed. They're more intense. I'm seeing more light. So I'm kind of bionically enhanced myself. And I'm interested in the possibility and maybe the inevitability that our bodies will respond to these changes over time when they become more and more common and modify themselves. The bodies will modify themselves to accommodate these things. I mean, imagine the destruction of your eyes and the replacement of them is a major thing, even though it's considered in this particular case, it's only the lenses, but still, it's pretty astonishing. And it enhances your life. Without hearing aids, my career as a filmmaker would have ended about 5 movies earlier, because you cannot make a movie if you can't hear. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I could not make a movie the way I have been without being able to hear. It's not just hearing the dialogue of the actors, which you can do over headphones if you still have some hearing left, but to feel what's happening on the set, the dynamic of the people on the set, what is said to people say to each other. So for me, to that extent, it's a very personal exploration of what this melding of technology and body means. But I've always thought that technology, in the 1940s and 50s especially, technology was often considered to be sort of something that came from outer space. I mean, advanced technology. There would be aliens who would come to Earth and they would have this amazing stuff like lasers or satellites. But for me, the technology has always been an extension of the human body. It's always been an aid to the telephone is an extension of the ear. Binoculars are an extension of the eyes. The telephone is the extension of the voice, and now it's also an extension of the entire physiology of the face. So technology to me is absolutely human. It is not sort of a cold mechanical thing, but it's always human. And then it comes back, though, to reshape us. It's kind of interesting process. And I've been aware of that early on in my filmmaking. And so in a sense, in Crimes of the Future, I am returning to those themes pushed in a different direction. I mean, sometimes I think my filmmaking is like a diamond that has many facets, it's been cut. And each film is my looking through one facet into the depth of the diamond. And then the next film, I'm looking at another facet and another facet. So, and it's, of course, it's very familiar that artists often return to the same themes, the painters who paint the same flower over and over again, looking for something different, to the essence of it. So in a way, I confess that this movie will remind a lot of people of other films that I've made, especially the earlier films. And I don't deny that there are those connections. What I must say, though, is it's not a referential thing. It's not me trying to say, I want you to think now of the scene in Existence or the scene in Videodrome. I really forget all my other films when I'm making a film. I know there'll be connections because it's coming out of my sensibility, my brain, but I focus really on the film. How do I make the film come alive? How do I make the characters come alive? How do I create this living ambience that the characters live in? And I don't think about the other films. And then later people point out to me the connections, and I can't deny that there are those connections. But it's not like the sort of referential kind of filmmaking where somebody says, I put this scene in to remind you of this Brian De Palma film, or I put this scene in to remind you of Hitchcock. To me, that doesn't actually give me anything in terms of my creative process. It doesn't help me, so I don't really think about it that way.
And the protagonist of Crimes of the Future is a performance artist who turns his innermost outside, and he makes himself vulnerable for the audience in a way. How much of yourself is in that character? Is it sort of an alter ego, or is it a reflection on what it means to be an artist?
Well, Viggo Mortensen said playfully in an interview that this was my most autobiographical film. And of course, in the literal sense of an autobiography, it is not, because I'm not a performance artist and I don't cut myself open, and it has nothing to do with my family or my upbringing. So, but what he was saying, being provocative, is basically what you're suggesting. And I think there is some truth in that, that I think that an artist, a true artist, is basically cutting himself open and giving his audience everything from inside in a very visceral, very organic, and a very emotional way. And so, in a way, Saul Tenser is the template for me of what a true artist would be. But I make it more literal because, of course, he is actually physically giving his body to the audience.
And several viewers would like to know why Viggo Mortensen? Why is he such a strong character in your life and in your film career? And if it's true that he needed some convincing for this role.
Yes. Well, Viggo and I, we seem to have a very symbiotic relationship here. There's a real chemistry between us. I mean, I have a good chemistry with most of my actors on the set, but it doesn't mean that you end up being friends and having a long-term friendship. And that seems, for some reason, to have worked with me and Viggo. We keep in touch. We talk all the time. We talk about our projects. We know each other's families and so on. However, you don't do an actor a favor by miscasting him or her. You, as a director, you have a responsibility to make the film properly with the proper actors. And that's a kind of a black art, casting a movie. It's not very much understood or discussed in terms of people talking about what a director does. But I think being a good casting director is part of being a director. Knowing when you're making a mistake with an actor, making sure that you don't get the wrong actor in a role just because that actor is suddenly hot or is being pushed on you, So with Viggo, I found a real collaborator. He understands filmmaking. In fact, right now he's shooting a movie in Mexico as a director and an actor, and he has directed a film a couple of years ago that he actually had me play a role in as an actor, and he shot it in Toronto, my hometown, with a lot of my crew and so on. So we really are meshing, our creative processes. He took a lot of convincing to play Freud and A Dangerous Method, and I completely understood that casting Viggo as Freud is not an obvious choice. I don't think many people would have assumed that would be the right way to go. But I could see that he would be a really interesting Freud. After all, this was a young Freud, not the old Freud that everybody knows, and a very young, dynamic, charismatic kind of Freud. Ultimately, he did play the role, and I think he was really wonderful in that role. Similarly, in Crimes of the Future, he really wanted to play the role of the detective, Cope. Yes, that was the role that he thought he would like. I asked him to read the script and see what he thought. And I knew that he would be good in that role, but I really thought that it would be more interesting for him to play. He could do that easily, I think. I thought it would be more interesting for him to play the lead role, which is not his traditional kind of character. This is a very reactive character, as he and I discussed. He's reacting to things, but he's not pushing things into existence. And that's a tricky kind of role to play, especially if it's a lead role, to be reactive to everything and still have some dynamism and charisma and so on. But ultimately, he accepted that was possible, and so he ended up playing the lead.
You mentioned the shoot in Greece before. Can you talk a bit about the reasons for that, and also maybe the challenges, also shooting during a pandemic?
Right. Well, we need for an independent film, you have the financing is often very complex with many, many elements. I think Robert Lantos said to me that there were 19 separate elements coming together to finance Crimes of the Future. And these were, sometimes there were private people putting in money, sometimes it would be government money, like Telefilm Canada put money in. The Greek government was willing to put in quite a lot of money to the film because they were trying to attract filmmaking to Greece, specifically Athens. And so they invest in the movie, basically. So I would say the first reason for shooting in Athens was money. You know, this is the movie business. But that wouldn't help if it was the wrong place for the movie. And I actually was quite excited to shoot there because, well, as you can see, I mean, it's just the texture of this very, very old city and the light of the Mediterranean. All of that seemed to work really well for the script. And what I had written for Toronto was translated rather well into Athens, in the sense that I was fully willing to embrace what Athens had to give and to abandon the specifics of this northeastern American city, which is Toronto. And it enhanced the movie in many subtle ways. And we had a mixed Greek and Canadian crew, as I've alluded to. We got along beautifully. I mean, I've just been getting texts from my Greek filmmaking friends who worked on the film, congratulating me, for having a a film being released the way it was, and being in Cannes, and being in San Sebastian, and being in the Lisbon Film Festival. So we keep in touch. It was great passion in the making of the film in Greece. It was fairly apocalyptic because, first of all, you're making a film under COVID protocols, which means everybody's wearing masks, you're having tests every 2 or 3 days. You really have to be careful where you went, where you ate. I learned, I've played a role in Star Trek Discovery, and it was on the Star Trek set in Toronto that I first saw what it meant to shoot a film under COVID protocols. And I saw, okay, it is possible to make a movie. It's more expensive because you have to have a COVID team. It's more complicated, a little awkward, but eventually everybody gets into the rhythm of it and it becomes very possible. Nonetheless, there are many members of my crew whose faces I never saw because they always were wearing masks. And it's very frustrating that, The other thing that happened was the fires, the heat. And sometimes it was 42 degrees Celsius in Athens. That's really hot and mercilessly hot. It made it very difficult to shoot. And also there were fires. The forests north of Athens and south of Athens were burning. And we were inhaling the smoke. One morning I woke up and looked out my hotel room and I could see nothing. It was just smoke. And I had a beautiful view of the sea. I could see nothing. And I could smell it, I could inhale it. We had to be really careful about where we were breathing, where we were shooting. So it was really quite difficult, but it did have a very apocalyptic feel to it, which of course suited the tone of the movie. So in that sense, even that added to the tone of the movie, I think. So in retrospect, I can say it was lucky. At the time, it was very difficult.
Over the years, you have influenced new generations of filmmakers, and one of the last one was obviously Julia Ducournau with Titan, who won the Golden Palm. Do you consider yourself a role model in a way? Do you pay attention to a new wave of body horror, if I may
Yes,
say it again.
Well, when I mean, I saw Julia's film Raw, which was called yes, in English it was called Raw, and I was very impressed by it. And I wasn't just impressed because of any influence I might have had or not had. I really thought she had a great talent and was doing some wonderful things in that movie. But in general, it pleases me to think that I have influenced some young filmmakers and given them some kind of shape that they can aspire to and so on. It's not something I think about when I'm making films, but I love to talk to young filmmakers and do a master class or whatever, as they call it, which was really basically a Q&A like what we're doing now. Actually, it's basically I talk about how I make films now. But I can't really give young filmmakers perfect advice about how to get into the film business, for example, because how the times that existed when I started filmmaking don't exist anymore. Mm. So it's all quite different. I mean, and of course, the whole aspect of digital technology, the fact that you can make a film on your iPhone, which people have done, that is phenomenal. I mean, when I started filmmaking, that would have been total science fiction. That would have been beyond Philip K. Dick, you know. So everything is different, and yet many things are the same. And my son has made 3 films. He's actually made his 3rd film, and was shooting it in Croatia and Budapest when I was shooting my film in Athens. So that was as a father, that was very delightful. And my daughter, my youngest daughter, has just finished directing her first film in Toronto. So the influences, you know, they don't ask me a lot of questions, you know. They might say, have you ever worked with this actor? Or do you know if I should trust this actor's agent or not? But beyond that, they're not asking me for advice about how to shoot. They have their own sense of visuals. My daughter was a stills photographer, a fashion photographer before she started to do some videos and so on. So it's I am a grandfather. I have 4 grandchildren. So yeah, I have that feeling. I have the feeling that if I could help anybody make a film, I would do it.
And we've talked about this break of 8 years that you used to write a novel. But of course, we all ask ourselves, what is David Cronenberg up to next? Are you going to stay in cinema, or can we expect something new?
Yes, you can. I mean, I had such a good time doing Crimes of the Future. I mean, my first 2 days on the film set, I thought that I was actually an actor impersonating a director. You know, I was playing the role of a director. But then after that, I thought, no, I actually am a director. I remember how to do this. And I have a script that I've written that I will be using to make a film in Toronto in the spring with the actor Vincent Cassel and Léa Seydoux once again, and the actor Guy Pearce, Australian actor. And it's a very different, it does have some body horror elements, I must say, but I don't think it would fit nicely in the genre. It's a very personal film for me in a way. So I'm very interested to do it. It's quite different, basically, from Crimes of the Future, despite the fact that, yes, there will be special effects in it.
We're very much looking forward to that. Mr. Cronenberg, thank you so much for your time and for this amazing film. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. I certainly hope your audiences have enjoyed it.